So now let me show you a presentation about the manipulation of photographs before the use of Photoshop. This is a subject that's very interesting to me. So much was done that looks like it couldn't have been done. It was so impressive what they were able to achieve. So even back in 1850, people wanted to look younger. People wanted to have their skin and their wrinkles smoothed out. They wanted a more youthful appearance. So photographers became also painters. They also were able to paint on negatives, on prints as well, and retouch them. So this woman, she wanted her skin, she wanted to look younger, and you could definitely tell. The unretouched image on the left from Albert Sands Southworth, and then we have a retouched image on the right. She looks definitely at least 10 or 15 years younger on the one on the right. So here's a little bit of a later photograph, but still the same kind of premise. So I'm not sure if this is used for an advertisement or if they had used this for some other thing, but he did not want the cigarette coming out of the mouth. And for aesthetic purposes, they got rid of some imperfections on his skin. That finger on the lower left of the image, they got rid of that too. So it looks like he's just leaning his hand that way. A lot of photo retouching here. So they painted on negatives. They also painted on prints. So here's a print, a salted paper print, 1880. And this is from Owen Angel and entitled Cherry Girl. So here we see a black and white photo. Now her dress and her skin are given some color to it. So this is the first kind of foray into color photography, let's say, right? So it's not actual, it's a mix of painting and photography. Here's another example. It's clearly a painted photograph. So here we have Maurice Gilbert's photo of Henry Toulouse-Lautrec. Now, Toulouse-Lautrec is a very famous artist, but here he wanted to be the model as well. He wanted to be the painter, and he also wanted to be the model. So Maurice had him do a double exposure. So that means he took two pictures on one plate. So in one picture, he had Henry sitting and looking at nothing, a blank chair, an empty chair. And the other picture, which is two images on one plate, he had him sitting as the model. So here we have two photographs. The one on the right was the actual photograph taken at the base of the falls in 1905. So as I said in the previous presentations, travel landscape photography was becoming very big. People wanted to see themselves on vacation. They wanted a memory of that trip or someplace that they visited. Now here, obviously the one on the left shows the whole falls in their glory. And I don't believe this family went to that location to take the photo because we see it on the lower right. We see them sitting at the base of the falls. So what happened was the photographer either put two negatives together or cut out the family and placed them on top of another negative and made another print. So this was done very skillfully, but quickly too. They were able to do this pretty quickly. It's amazing. Now they would take these pictures, then they would mail them back to the family where they lived. So the family might lay out, I don't know, 25 cents, a dollar, and by the time they got back to their home, the photo was waiting for them. So here we have another composite image. This is actually more than 3 images put together. I think it's close to 5 or 6 images. This is a very famous portrait here, picture. This is by Henry Peach Robinson. It's called Fading Away. In 1858, it was still very taboo to photograph and showcase people on their deathbed dying. But this is a fake scene. This is a young girl who is pretending to be passing away and sick. Her family is mourning, looking at her. Now in the background, we see a man looking out the window, stormy clouds back there. And as I said before, that it's very hard to get clouds to come out in these photographs, especially when you're dealing with a photograph from inside, which was rarely done because it was so hard to get a proper exposure. So this photograph is more than one image put together, properly exposed and put together. So the sky is a separate image altogether. The man is another image, another glass negative probably. And then we have the people, which might be 1, 2, or even 3 separate negatives put together. Here's that example of how difficult it was to get clouds to come up in the picture. So basically a lot of photographers, just like Carleton Watkins here in 1867, they had a collection of properly exposed images just of the sky. So they got these clouds and they basically sandwiched 2 negatives together and got one beautiful print, like the one on the right. So he had the one on the left where he actually took the photo and he couldn't get any clouds coming out, and then he added some clouds on the right. There was a fascination with putting people in objects, people in bottles, things like that, wine glasses. So here we have a man in a bottle. So this man commissioned the photographer and wanted his body to be put into a bottle. This is the most impressive, I think, seamless image put together here. This is many, many images. This is from 1930, so now we're jumping ahead, but still there's no computers, there's no Photoshop. So this is many, many negatives either cut out meticulously, because now these negatives could possibly be on a cellulose material, a flexible material, and cut out, not just on glass. So here we have man on rooftop with 11 men on his shoulders. Here we have some spirit photos. Now, spirit photos were a big deal. There was photography studios popping up that were claiming that they could capture your loved one's image or somebody who had passed image in the frame with you. So they would have a sitter sit, pay a fee, and when they got their image, they would see this ghost-like appearance behind them. And the photographer said it was, their dying, their dead uncle, or their somebody's ghost that was lingering behind them. All made up, obviously. And later on, there was actually lawsuits against these photographers, and in New York City, a lot of them were won. Here's more composite-like photos. So these are multiple images, many, many images of children that worked in cotton mills. So these are child laborers before child labor laws were passed. So these were children that were working long days in factories. And this was captured by Lewis Hine, very, very popular photographer who was able to document the injustices that was happening around him. This is from 1913. And each one of these children's photos is actually comprised of maybe 20 to 30 different children's pictures. So here we have a photograph that was made into a painting. Now this is Lenin and Stalin put together, looking like they're best friends, joking around in 1922, which wouldn't have actually been going on. So we're talking about dictatorships, and we're talking about, in the next few slides, how they used manipulation of images to their advantage. So here we have Stalin and some of his workers next to him. And what happened was, if you look next to Stalin's right in the middle with his hand in his coat pocket, a gentleman on the right. Now apparently at some point that gentleman on the right did something that Stalin did not like and was executed. So he was retouched, painted out of the photograph. Here's another example of that. We have four people started on the left, starting with, and then we end up with three in the middle and two at the end. Now, these are probably published images too. Stalin had published in books and other publications of him and maybe his cabinet of officials. So, whenever something like this happened, where somebody fell out of favor with him, he would have to have them republish everything with a new picture, which is very costly, but he did not care. Here we have Adolf Hitler. Now, he was notorious for having his images photoshopped. Well, manipulated, because there was no Photoshop at this point. So here we see on the upper top image, we have Hitler, we have five people together, and on the right we have Joseph Goebbels. Now, on the lower image, he is removed. So for some reason, Hitler did not want him in this photo. He didn't kill him, but he removed him from the photo. So the most important part of manipulating photos was for propaganda during the wars. So we have unidentified German artist here that showed a powerful collision here in 1914. So he had one soldier very, very large, and then other soldiers below him that he was showing his might and how much stronger he was to them below and small. So in the 1950s, there was a fear of the atomic bomb and what would happen if they were detonated in certain cities, etc. So here is an unidentified artist that made a image of some sort of explosion over New York City, which actually this image scared a bunch of people. They didn't like seeing it. So now we're getting to 1930 here. We have Woman in Champagne Glass by Howard S. Riddell. Now this is definitely advertising purposes. So we have a woman relaxing, smoking a cigarette in a champagne glass. Another portrait craze was for people to go to a photography studio, have their picture taken, and then pay for the photographer to make it look like they had a decapitation, whether it's them or another person that was decapitated. So here we have a decapitated man holding a knife and a head in 1875. In the next two slides, you're going to see this woman here with a fur collar in 1870. And in the next slide, you'll see that she is made into a bust. She is made into a sculpture, a ceramic sculpture. So this is made with paint again. So the art of painting on photographs. So we just did a whole presentation on war photography, but this is crime scene photography. Here's Weegee. He's a very, very popular 1950s photographer who had a police scanner in his car. He heard something going on, so he immediately rushed to scenes, took photos, sold them to newspapers. He also was a part of this craze of manipulating images, not for the newspapers per se, but for his own personal images and gain. So here we have a crime scene photo that he took inside a bottle. Now in the next few slides, you're just going to see advertisements and combinations of pictures put together that are just really amazing to look at and to try to think of how they did without Photoshop.